Good afternoon and welcome to today's media availability session with the National Federation of State High School Associations. We're glad to have you with us today. My name is Bruce Howard. I'm the Director of Publications and Communications for the NFHS. The NFHS is located in Indianapolis, and we're the national leader and advocate for high school athletics and performing arts programs. Our membership are state associations in the 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, and serving 19,500 schools and more than 12 million student participants, not only in athletics, but in performing arts programs as well. Over the 103 years of our history, one of the chief tasks has been the writing of playing rules for 17 sports for boys and girls, as well as more recently, through our Learning Center online education courses for coaches, officials, parents, students, and others. So we're glad to have everyone with us today as we look forward to bringing you up to date on some important subjects going on. Dr. Karissa Niehoff, our Chief Executive Officer of the NFHS, and Dana Pappas, our Director of Officiating Services for the NFHS, will be leading our session today. Just some housekeeping items. Session is being recorded and will be available at the conclusion through our YouTube channel. We also can send you a link if you so request. We'll be glad to send you a link to that. Live streaming of our Zoom windows is permitted, and we encourage you to place any questions that you may have in the Q&A, and we will get to as many of those as possible as soon as we conclude with our three topics that we have to discuss today. First, going to look at the officiating issues and some of the problems with retention and recruitment of officials, and some sportsmanship issues, behavior issues that are affecting retaining and recruiting officials across the country. Also, an update on the NIL, name, image, and likeness, and the roles that both the NFHS and our member state associations play in that. And finally, throughout the year, we've been looking at celebrating the 50th anniversary of Title IX, which occurs June 23rd of this month. And we wanted to bring you up to date as we look forward to our summer meeting this year, when we will kind of conclude and bring to a conclusion as the year-long celebration. With us today in my department, Chris Boone, Assistant Director of Communications and Publications. He'll be directing questions to Dr. Niehoff and to Dana Pappas. Cody Porter, our Manager of Media Relations, and Nate Perry, our Coordinator of Media Relations, are on board helping us with the call today, and we appreciate them on board. So we welcome Karissa and Dana to our session today, and I'll let Dr. Niehoff begin the session at this time.
Well, Bruce, thank you very much, and thanks to the team, of course, that have put this together. To all of you in the media profession, thank you for your flexibility in moving from Thursday to today. Much appreciated. It's been a while since we've been with you all in this format, and I just want to take the opportunity to say that throughout COVID, not only when we conducted the media availability sessions, but when we interacted with each of you individually or in groups, podcasts, interviews, what have you, you all have been phenomenal. It's been a long time since we pulled an availability session together, but we're ready to re-engage, and just want to tell you on behalf of all of us at the Federation that we truly appreciate what you do. Certainly through COVID, you worked your best to keep messaging alive, keep people connected, to keep the stories up in front of people. And you did it on a national capacity, and we couldn't be more grateful for the relationship we have with you. Following the session, as always, please stay in touch with us if there's any issue that comes up regarding any topic. Cody Porter as our Manager of Media Relations and Nate Perry as our Coordinator. They are just phenomenal. Reach out to them and they'll get you in touch with us, and we'll do our best to respond as soon as possible. But thank you for what you do in your profession. Often you go unthanked probably too often, but we're grateful. I want to jump right into the three topics that we have to present and discuss with you today. The first being the officiating profession and some of the concerns that we have here that we've had for quite some time, frankly. As you all know, as you talk to folks that deal with sports at any level throughout the athletic ecosystem, whether it be youth, scholastic, collegiate, international, professional, we have an official shortage that we are facing across sports. We've watched this coming. It's been a bit of a storm in the horizon, but I think COVID exacerbated the pace that we needed to execute to pay attention to this. We've been working for 4 years now on officials recruitment campaign. We've talked about that in the past, but when we brought Dana Pappas on board, immediately our efforts just ramped up exponentially, and she's just been a tremendous addition to the team here in Indianapolis. Right away, she knew we had to bring groups together from around the nation to stage what was the first and certainly not the last of what we're calling the Officials Consortium, to deal with some of the concerns we have, not just in the shortage in terms of numbers, but also in some of the efforts we undertake to keep them educated, to keep them engaged and excited, and really have a strong generational experience for the officials as a profession. And obviously, parent and fan behavior is a significant part of this. Before we get into talking about our behavior campaign, which we are set to launch, I'd like to invite Dana to talk specifically about our officials consortium that she facilitated last April. It was a tremendous success. She was just a tremendous leader. We've got 61 attendees that are excited to go and keep working. So Dana, just tremendous work that you're doing. Would you like to tell our media folks about the consortium?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today and for your attention, your attendance as we go through some of the issues that are currently within the National Federation. So as Dr. Niehoff mentioned, we had our NFHS Officials Consortium April 12th through the 14th, and it was here in person in Indianapolis. And we had done some invitation only just to try to make sure that we included people from every level of sport, every sport available. And as Karissa mentioned, it was 61 attendees, and they were all leaders within their different entities, representing 42 of those sport entities, which was really exciting because we did have representatives from professional ranks, collegiate, youth, national governing bodies. We had a couple of coaches associations who were involved. And then we had members of our officials advisory committee who were representing our state associations. So we wanted to make sure that we were getting as many voices together. When I joined the NFHS staff in August, one of the first things that happened was kind of a barrage of phone calls and emails and people with concerns about this recruitment and retention issue. We all knew it was a problem. We all knew that there was a shortage. But what was happening is every entity was coming up with its own strategy for how to deal with recruitment, deal with retention, and no one was really collaborating to try to get together and figure out what to do next. So the goal of our consortium was really to bring everybody together to develop a collaborative approach to how to fix the problem. So the consortium was a 3-day long event. And during that time, we actually had the attendees get together and break into work groups. The first day that they got together, they were identifying barriers and different problems with regard to officials recruitment and retention. And they looked at it in terms of both external barriers and internal barriers. So many times those external barriers are the ones that are very easy to identify. It's the sportsmanship, it's the behavior, it's the things that you see on social media anytime you look on those different resources. And the second day we looked at the solutions. So those were categorized in behavior, which Chris will go into with our behavior campaign, as well as solutions as far as recruitment and retention. So as we talked through some of that, we talked obviously about behavior. We talked about the cost to be an official. We talked about kind of a lack of empathy and a lack of humane treatment of officials, and how there's just not a lot of knowledge for what officials go through to become officials. There's a misconception that people are handed a whistle at the door and they just go out and officiate, which is not at all the case. So trying to educate all parties about what they need to do. We talked about security concerns and how many times at the high school and youth levels, there's an absence of security. So officials are left to deal with situations in the stands, as well as issues when they're getting dressed out of the trunk of their car for their baseball games. So we really tried to identify every issue facing officials and then present some potential solutions for those issues. So the next step after the consortium concluded was to have some sectional follow-up summits that were held online. We had 8 of them in conjunction with our 8 NFHS sections, and really presented the findings from the consortium, but then asked those attendees, it was coaches, officials, state association administrators, everybody was invited. So whoever wanted to be on, we absolutely presented to them and had them provide their comments. From that, we're developing a toolkit that will be available to anybody who wants to be a part of the solution. Our approach with this is nothing's a secret. The more people that we can have involved in helping the men and women who officiate, it's a good thing. So we'll be providing that toolkit. And then in the fall, I believe we'll be having Consortium 2.0, which will be comprised of coaches, administrators, law enforcement and security, media personnel, and really taking the ideas from the consortium and the summits and talking about how all of the different stakeholders can help the problem and how to solve the problem. So that'll be coming out. You'll see some information about that as we get a little bit closer to it. But we did feel that it was very important for our office to partner with the coaches associations across the country, with administrators associations. We'll be trying to work with NASSP, the secondary school principals, as well as NIAAA, to get them on board, because the things that are going on in their campuses, we need their help. So it's hard for the officials and for our office to be the police for all of that. So we definitely need the buy-in from the people at the principal, superintendent, athletic director level. And as far as the consortium, this was all tied into a survey that we had done about the numbers of officials. And I know Cody's got some information up on the screen now. We looked at initially, right before Christmas break, we had asked our state associations to send us in the numbers of officials across the country. So we looked at that initially from 2018, 2019 to 2021, 2022. So we had 37 states that actually reported their data. And we saw that there was a known loss of about 34,000 officials. The problem was we didn't have all of our states, and we have large states such as California, Texas, and New York that don't track numbers of officials. So the estimate based on all of the trends across the country was about 50,000 officials that we had lost. At the end of this school year, we asked the state associations to then send us their full year for 21-22 to kind of see where we were. So as you can see on the screen, we actually had an increase of about 12,000 officials from last year to this year, which is great news. I think it's obviously still not enough, but that number of a 6% increase is very good. So now if we look at the data again, 2018-19 is kind of what we consider our pre-COVID numbers. And from 18-19 to 21-22, that decrease is about 19,500. So it's a 9% decrease instead of probably closer to 20%. We do have states that are actually above their pre-pandemic numbers, which is amazing. I don't know how they're doing it yet, but I'm certainly going to find out. The states that are above those pre-pandemic numbers are Delaware, Iowa, Nevada, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Utah. So for them to already have kind of rebounded from the shortage and COVID and all of the other difficulties going on is pretty tremendous. So the map that's up on the screen right now are the registration numbers from 18-19 to this past year. The states in green are those that have increased over that time period. Those in red have decreased. And then the gray are states that either haven't reported or don't collect, or they just didn't report this year or last year, so we didn't have enough data for comparison. So that's the map you're looking at now. And then this map is actually from last year to this year. So green is an increase, which that map looks a little bit better than the previous one. Red is a decrease. And then gray are those not reported numbers, or those that we just don't have sufficient data for comparison. So in looking at it, you can see that there was some rebound that took place across the country. But as we talked at the consortium, one of the issues is because of the increase in games, we just continue to be short. And we've talked quite a bit lately about the high school officials and how they may not have quit. They're just getting pulled to either the youth level or up to the collegiate level to work. So we're still losing them at the high school ranks. We're hoping that they're still officiating somewhere, but they're definitely, in a lot of cases, not working for us. So that information, I know Cody will be sharing with everybody. He's got a spreadsheet that has all of that data with some numbers as far as growth state by state. So you will receive that. I believe it's putting it in the chat, if I'm not mistaken. That's really where we are with the officials information. And again, we'll circle back with Karissa, who will go over information about the behavior campaign. Thank you.
Dana, great job. Thank you. So yes, a behavior campaign. Out of the officials consortium was tremendous energy around the treatment of officials. And as I mentioned earlier, we've had an officials campaign alive for 4 years, a nationwide campaign designed to recruit and retain officials. But that being said, and that being somewhat successful, we're still hearing just horrific examples and stories of officials being assaulted. Numbers of states right now that actually have state legislation either on the table or having been passed that specifically speaks to protecting officials from assault. And to know that our states and the state governments are having to do that is extremely disheartening. We see things on social media, we see things, we hear stories, and we see just awful examples of how officials are treated. And these are officials that are experienced veterans or even brand new, late teens, early 20s that are just starting out in the career, and they're just being treated miserably. So obviously out of the consortium came an ask to do something about this behavior. And we got together in the office and we said, you know what? The term sportsmanship has been used a long time. And while it's still really important, we feel like it might be a little bit watered down at this point, a little bit tired. So we said, you know what? We're going to go out big. We're going to go out with a behavior campaign. Because as we start to look at what's really going on in these contests, we obviously know what's happening with officials, but if you look into the bleachers, look onto the sidelines, look at how people are just treating each other, it's horrible in many cases. So we want our behavior campaign to really address how everyone is involved, how we all have to be committed to addressing poor behavior and not allow it to be normalized. As Dana mentioned, there's a toolkit that's being developed. We are happy to get this out to anybody interested. The second consortium coming up, you'll see the expanded audience there, law enforcement and security. We want all boorish behavior to be addressed. Certainly how we treat officials, but just bad behavior. And we want to be clear. If we need to be a little bit more edgy than we've been in the past, we're going to do it. But we've got to embrace a commitment to a zero tolerance policy, if you will, or approach to bad behavior. We're starting to see examples. In fact, I think in New Mexico, there was a recent example of a high school that said, you know what, no more. We're not going to tolerate bad behavior anymore. This is what we need to see start to happen. Collective commitment, very clear expectations, and very clear accountability and consequences. And I think by doing that will help to prevent bad behavior from continuing to be normalized. This is certainly an area where we could ask for your help as media. When you hear the good stories, let us know, tell those good stories. Obviously, the bad examples of behavior hit the media as well. We need your help in messaging that this is not okay. And to any time it's appropriate to reference what we're doing at the NFHS with our collaborative partnership, we just ask you to help us out there. And if we can help you, we're ready to do it. So the behavior campaign will be launching after our summer meeting, where we will roll it out to our membership. So stay tuned to start to hear more about that. We're going to move to our next topic out of respect for your time. Again, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A and we'll do our best to get to them at the end. The next topic we wanted to address with you is name, image, and likeness. We've had many conversations with you one-on-one. I've participated in many, many podcasts and interviews about this, and just really essentially where the NFHS stands on the notion of high school student athletes being able to benefit from NIL. While we've not issued an official position statement because we are a federation by design and cannot require states to have one uniform policy about this, we do make ourselves pretty clear that we realize high school age students can be tremendous entrepreneurs. They already are with their name, image, and likeness in a number of capacities. We realize that they have the ability in a handful of cases to be recognized for their athletic prowess. And the NFHS realizes that that can be a nice opportunity for a young person. However, we're also very clear that we believe a high school student athlete should not be able to benefit as a professional for something that they don't own. And that would be the high school jersey, the high school uniform. So while we recognize that high school age student athletes have an ability to benefit from name, image, and likeness through contract relationships with a fiduciary equation in there, we are very clear that we do not support the situation that would involve a member state association school and their student athletes entering into professional paid contracts while representing that member school. We know that there are private schools outside of the NFHS membership where heavy duty recruiting, really active negotiations with contract agents and such are taking place. But right now within the member 51 state associations, while some state statutes are bringing high school student athletes into their language, right now our state association regulations and bylaws are holding firm that no student athlete in a member school can become a professional paid student athlete by virtue of their identity as a student athlete in that school. So we wanted to be very clear about where the NFHS stands on that. We hope that our position holds because we really believe that the purpose of high school athletics and performing arts is not to develop professional athletes. It's to develop kids. It's to develop life skills. It's to develop relationships. And the high school locker room is arguably the last sort of pure bastion of amateurism within an education-based setting that's real thorough and supportive. We want to protect that. So we stand ready to talk with anybody to support our state association should challenges arise. Again, we believe that the purpose of high school activities is very different from the purpose of professional or even collegiate activities for that matter. But we realize our kids can enjoy some success with their name, image, and likeness, but we believe strongly that it should not be while wearing a member school jersey. So wanted to bring that to your attention as to where we are now within the NFHS. And again, if you have questions, we'll come back around to those at the end. That graphic you'll see right now in statute, those states permit high school students to benefit. It's sort of a point maybe worth of interest that New York and California originally allowed high school age kids to enter into professional contracts, but originally it was about acting because they had such a high population of actors and actresses in Cali and in New York. So now we're seeing a small pocket of states that are allowing this now with a lens on sport, but not specifically high school sport as a member of their state association high school. Cody, thanks for sharing that. If we can, we'll move right on to topic number 3, which is Title IX. It's no secret, I think, that we're in the 50th year anniversary of the passage of Title IX, June 23rd, 1972. We have been engaged in a year-long national campaign around Title IX. We've been doing a number of things, anything from developing an online course about what Title IX is and what it is not, looking closely at how to measure compliance with Title IX in any institution that receives federal funds. We also have been telling a number of stories celebrating the wonderful pioneers from all of our 50 states and Washington, D.C., who have paved the way for Title IX opportunities for both men and women. We've had a number of speaking engagements around the country, a lot of collaboration with coaching groups, officiating groups, schools, and even with young people to talk about the importance of keeping a Title IX lens going forward, far beyond, ad infinitum, past the 50th anniversary. You'll see some of the data there about some of the eyes on the social media and informational things that we've shared nationally. We've done a number of workshops and forums. In early May, we had a National Women in Leadership Forum. That was a tremendous success. And at our summer meeting coming up, June 28th to July 2nd, we'll have a Title IX theme with a number of female speakers leading our sessions, panelists, keynote speakers, and a lot of celebratory energy around what Title IX has meant for young people, both boys and girls nationwide, and the importance of a lens on equity and what equity really means. So we have a lot of work to do out there still. The athletic ecosystem is a very transient one. New ADs and coaches, administrators are constantly coming and going, as are our young people. So we want to keep Title IX top of mind as we go forward. But check out our website. You'll see a link to a number of our resources that are free to access. And there'll be more coming, I'm sure, after our summer meeting about the celebrations that we held within the NFHS family. So I will pause there as we've gone quickly through our 3 topics and invite any questions to be shared or comments from our audience.
Yeah, thank you, Karissa and Dana, for that information. Appreciate that. Running through those topics. Once again, if you have any questions, please place them in the Q&A and we will get to them as soon as we can. Karissa, the first question here is regarding NIL. So what legal grounds would the NFHS advise its member associations to apply in the event the associations face legal action by disallowing its athletes to benefit from name, image, and likeness?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would encourage state associations to have a good, solid handle on their association development documents, including, if they call it a constitution, their mission, vision, purpose statements, as well as their regulations and bylaws, and how those regs and bylaws are developed procedurally. Our state associations develop their state level documents really through a membership driven process. And the membership comes from schools, the education professionals that are trained to know what is best for the growth and development of our kids. They have a handle on the differences in socioeconomics and demographics in our student population. They know what is best for the development of our young people. They can speak to a very well-developed purpose for their activities, and they can probably bring a lot of data to the table about the number of high school participants, and we can help them with this, that actually do in fact go on to even play in college. The D1 through 3 level after high school, depending on the sport, is anywhere from 1% to 5%. And not all of those are even scholarship opportunities. Those are just opportunities for interest. So I think if state associations are well prepared with refreshed documents, a deep understanding of the relevance of their regs and bylaws, especially for the growth of kids and the purpose that their activities serve, and how their state membership is supportive of these documents, that's a powerful voice to bring into a legislature. It's more informed, it's more trained, it's more expert, it's 100 years old, and really speaks to the purpose of what they're doing for kids.
Thank you. Very good. Another NIL question came in. What is your singular greatest concern with the movement of NIL?
I think singular concern, and this would be at all levels, is that there'll be a very quick sort of hot butter in a hot pan spread. Rapid growth of professed experts in this field, agents. We're looking at what's happening at the collegiate level with just absolute pop-up of things that are very distracting to young people and their families that are not necessarily well informed. We're seeing them look to the transfer portal as opportunities to go and find a better NIL deal. So we're seeing a breakdown in continuity of the educational experience. We're seeing a backlog in the transfer portal. Some of it obviously is COVID related, and it'll take us a little bit to clear that out. But we're hearing that even some of our recruiting efforts are going right to a transfer portal. So we're seeing sort of an erosion of an education-based recruiting process at the collegiate level. At the high school level, I worry about the absolute breakdown of the culture and climate of a high school locker room, and the purpose for kids to play high school sports. If we start to allow a high school young person wearing their Friday Night Lights jersey to engage in professional contract, now you've not only disrupted the dynamics of amateurism, but now the dynamics of the team, the school, the community. You have a child earning money because they are a public school student and a pretty good athlete with that jersey on. Extremely disruptive to the purpose of high school sports. Excuse me. So I worry about the breakdown of not just a pathway to education after high school and perhaps participation, excuse me, but also the breakdown of the very sensitive culture and climate that is amateur high school sports.
Great, thank you. Next question, kind of staying with NIL. In those states that have approved NIL rules, how do schools and states determine if students are not receiving money for their athletic fame or their team jersey?
Yeah, so again, right now, the allowance to do that is apart from their identity as a student in a particular school. So right now, if schools are aware that a young person is making money on their NIL, as long as that student athlete is not doing so while wearing their school jersey, and they're just out there on their own, people know that they're a good athlete. Maybe they're on a billboard in a blank shirt or in the car dealer shirt. That's one thing. And it's not really as much of a concern for state associations. But again, there's that very fine line. As soon as we see a student athlete that is engaging in a professional contract, while they're enrolled in a high school for that identity, we've got a problem. And that's a rules violation. As soon as the school finds out, they would follow the typical process of violation, reporting it to the state association, and then undergoing whatever process is in place for their bylaws. Will we know? We may not know before it happens, if it happens, but I think, you know, media being what it is, communication being what it is, schools would find out pretty quickly.
Thank you. Kind of shifting gears to the officiating topic now. One of the biggest challenges seems to be at the youth level in addressing that behavior. How do we get our message across to parents at youth games to stop harassing officials?
I'll start with this and then pass to Dana as well. If we means the media, or we means media and us together, we can, through our work that we do, messaging, educational resources, any type of working with our states, with our coaches, with our collaborative relationships with coaches associations, youth sport agencies, we're going to be ramping all of that up. If it's media, it's, I would say, to the earlier point, the ask, we want to help you with resources. If you can do what you do to really tell the good stories, and when there is something egregious, you know, be sure to communicate. That's not okay. That is not okay. To reference efforts that we're making in many ways, in many areas. But we've got to not let this become more the norm than it is. So we're going to ramp up our efforts. We will do whatever we can to support the media. And we ask your help in helping bring attention to this issue. Dana, do you want to jump in and add anything there?
Yes, I do think that one of the positives, since we had the consortium and the sectional follow-ups, is that we've had a number of youth sports organizations who are either at the consortium or who joined the sectional follow-ups or who have called since then. And they're definitely interested in partnering because they understand that a lot of the issues that we're dealing with at the high school level actually kind of start at the youth level. So we're really trying to find those collaborative solutions. And one of the suggestions that came out of the consortium was devising some, as Karissa mentioned earlier, some zero tolerance policies and really promoting those through media, through social media, so that people understand that that expectation of behavior is going to be the same whether you're watching your kid play Little League on Sunday or high school sports on Friday night. So we want to make sure that people understand that there's a level of expectation and behavior at all levels of sport so that when they go, they're not surprised. They know where they are, they know their audience, and they understand that the behavior is expected of them wherever they go. So the fact that so many stakeholders are interested in partnering with us with the behavior campaign and some of the other initiatives that are coming out of the consortium is a positive, because it makes it so that high school isn't on an island by itself. We have support from the levels both above and below us.
Very good, thank you. Kind of in that same vein regarding solutions to officiating shortages, how do you see increased wages going to retaining officials, especially with the increased price of gas in recent months?
It's a big deal. I'm not sure increasing wages realistically through what school budgets can do can get at the price of gas right now. And we hear from officials in the surveys that the wages are not the number one reason they do it, and they're not the number one reason they stop doing it. And Dana can certainly speak to this, but wages are one piece. One of the other issues that has come to our attention more so recently is actually the tax situation on officials. We're learning a lot about this and how officials are taxed nationwide. So I think increasing wages, should it be an incentive, a high stakes incentive, it would have to be fairly significant. I don't know that our schools are positioned to do it, but certainly it's going to be a part of our campaign that, you know, nobody's going to leave their much higher paying regular job to go get yelled at, give up 5 hours, go get yelled at, and take home $70. So that is a concern. It's real. And I think that's going to be a piece of what we get at. Dana, do you want to?
It is, and that was one of the asks from the consortium, was really that the National Federation help send that information out, give some national data so that states are aware of what neighboring states are paying, because that is an issue where it's, well, if I go across the border, which is only 10 miles from where I live, they're paying better and I have a better chance of maybe some of the costs being absorbed. The issues of gas, uniform costs, everything are on the rise right now, and what officials are being paid are not they're not keeping up. So we really want to encourage schools, if they're possible, and state associations, whomever is setting those pay scales, to ensure that when they're looking at budgets, the officials are actually considered a cost of doing business, because many times that officiating expense kind of gets lost a little bit, and then we end up with no officials and people are upset, and it's like, well, they were not factored into the equation. So we want to make sure as those discussions happen that the officials' fees are a part of it. And even the youth organizations asked if we would share our data for pay with them because they want to make sure that they're fairly compensating officials as well. So I think, we want to make sure that states have that information, but then they're also comparing kind of apples to apples. A state like Wyoming or New Mexico, where I came from, they can't compete with what's being paid on the eastern part of the United States. So they have to keep that in perspective as well when they're looking at those pay issues, and we'll give them some guidance as far as what to do. We as a federation can't set those pay scales, but we can certainly provide some data to help states as they're going through that process.
Very good. Regarding officials as well, one of the biggest challenges seems to be parents contributing to poor behavior at games. How do we address that issue and reach them with this behavior campaign?
Well, that's been something we've been trying to do for a long time through our efforts in sportsmanship, the coursework that we provide, the campaigns that we've done, the messaging that we do, and it's frustrating. You'd think after COVID, when nobody could play and everybody missed their activities, that people would have come back more grateful. We're actually hearing the opposite, that they're coming back and the behaviors quickly gone back to negative. Not sure the why behind that. If people are still coming back frustrated and angry because of everything we've been through for 2 years, that could be some of it. But we're hearing that it's not good. We're going to continue to ramp up our messaging. And as Dana reiterated, we've got to help states with no tolerance policies. Dana's effort to bring law enforcement and school administrators into the officials' issue front and center is key. We've probably all been at a basketball game where there's a rock in the back door of the gym. You might have security either at the front of the gym or leaning against the wall chatting. And you might even have the school administrator who's chatting with the security. And there's things going on in the stands. AD's trying. We've got to get on that and have everybody aware that we have to look internally first and look at everybody, not just parents. Parents will learn quickly if they're getting tossed out of a gym. Most of them will want to come back, and maybe they're hard learners, slow learners, but after 2 or 3 of those, that they should learn. We know where the kids are. Kids go up to officials and say, hey, can you shut that guy up? Oh, and by the way, that's my dad. So we know where the kids are. We know where we all want to go. More than parents, it's got to be everybody. And parents also need to be given tools to police one another. Some sort of, this gym uses these strategies. If you get a yellow finger pointed at you, it means cut it out. And nobody has to say anything, but you got pointed. Things like that, just to brainstorm. And if it sounds silly and stupid, it might just work. But we really have to be clear. We really have to be together and just be hard on it. We've got to hit this hard. Dana, what do you think?
We talked a bit about that, and actually in conversations following the consortium, it's come up quite a bit. And one of the things that we really want to do from the officials' perspective is try to find ways to educate parents, because many times when you hear parents yelling at officials, it's not even a rule. So they're yelling things that don't exist in any rules code that high school plays. It might be a Sunday rule and not a Friday night rule. So how do we educate? How do we get officials to go have clinics and classes in preseason with parents? Not only does that help from an education standpoint, but it can help get some new officials in, or it can also just help humanize those officials who have now taken a Monday night to go talk to the basketball team at XYZ high school. And they kind of go, wait a minute, this is our town librarian or whoever who is also an official, and they're giving of their time so my kid can play. But Karissa hit the nail on the head, because all we heard during COVID was we just want our kids to play. We just want our kids to play. We couldn't prevent COVID. that was something that was outside of all of our control. The more we remind parents that behavior, or spectators, whomever the case may be, that behavior has become sort of the next pandemic. Officials will stop officiating, games will cease to exist, just like they did in COVID. This is presentable or preventable. This is something that parents can control how they behave. And if they don't, they're going to be sitting at home wishing their kids were playing again. So it's all an educational process, and through officials associations in conjunction with coaches associations, which are critical in this discussion, administrators associations, we've all got to partner together to help educate those spectators so that they understand that it's their behavior largely that's affecting the ability for kids to play.
Well said, Dana.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well said.
Shifting gears to the anniversary of Title IX. With all the advancements in the past 50 years, it doesn't seem like the number of women in high school coaching and administration have kept up with the participation of girls in playing sports. How do we get more females in coaching and administration positions?
Your question is absolutely spot on. In fact, at the collegiate level, it's going in the other direction. There's a tremendous concern across the board about getting more women coaches into the profession. A number of groups are out there that exist to do that. And of course, we're collaborating with these groups. I think what we need to do is start to tap young women, and where it may not seem as much of a natural career pathway, we've got to get them early, get them engaged with a mentor, and keep them involved in the profession. I think we have to start to think creatively, especially at the high school level, about what we can do to support the lifestyle of women, many of whom are mothers. What do we do to help them in their role as mothers? And you know, I'm not saying we set up daycares, but maybe in some places that's what you do. If you're a female official, you've got young ones, is there some sort of child watching service that we do? But we've got to get them engaged, get them hooked in the profession, get them connected with a high profile mentors, role models, get them involved in situations that are successful, and give them some networking of folks like them, and start to tell the story. This is why it's important to be a female in girls sports as a coach or an official. It matters. So we just, you know, the trend is not an easy one to address, because there's so many reasons why women do or do not engage. But if we can help them with that work-life balance at the local level, I think we can realize some success there.
That's a good transition into our next question here. Is kind of your own personal experience with Title IX. Karissa, is talk about your high school experience and the importance of Title IX to you, and how your life would be different without Title IX.
Oh, I appreciate the question. So to say it, I'm 56 years old. So I was 6 when Title IX was passed. So in some ways, I don't know anything but that there was a Title IX. But at the same time, my own experiences were drastically different from my male counterparts in high school, in college, and to some degree still being sort of one of the first CEO positions in sport in 2022 with such a disparity. So we've got a long way to go. So I was able to participate in high school sports. I did not have middle school sports. So I got to high school, and fortunately in 1979 as a starting freshman, was able to run track, and then sophomore, junior, senior year, pick up other sports. So we had access to athletics. However, we had the old gym. The boys had the new gym. We had fewer games than the boys. We didn't go to tournaments than the boys did. We played in the afternoon. They played in the evening, which, truth be told, I liked that because we got back to the school and we could watch the boys play. But anyway, that's an equity issue for some folks. So they got new uniforms on a more frequent basis than we did. We didn't really notice. We were just enjoying what we were doing. I think it started to become clearer when I went to college. I was a Division I field hockey player. I did have a scholarship to play. I had a full ride. And I noticed right away that our field hockey team was more successful than our football team by a long shot. And we only had 4 scholarship athletes, and they had well over 60 of their players that received some form of scholarship. They had separate dining hours. They had separate plane trips to their games. There was a pretty significant disparity. So while we had opportunities, there were differences. Going into coaching, one of the few women to coach, obviously going into school administration was a little more balanced, but into athletic administration and now state association leadership, this job now, still a long way to go in terms of the number of faces that are there. I will say I have never at this level received any kind of discriminatory behavior. I've received nothing but support. I think those kinds of challenges might exist more at the grassroots level, where there's a little bit less sort of focus on equity and maybe a little bit less sophistication in terms of development of leadership. So it's been a wonderful experience. I've been blessed. Tremendous differences, but many benefits. And now we just have to work on that pipeline.
Thank you. That's good. I had one more question come in. I think it's a good one. Some of these issues you're discussing today have a direct bearing on school districts' leadership. How closely is the NFHS working with national school leadership groups like the AASA, and the School Superintendents Association, and the Principals Association, and to some extent, local school boards?
Yeah, it's a great question. And right out of the gate, I'll say we need to be doing more. We've had good working relationships with those groups. They've tended to ebb and flow around significant issues like concussion, health and safety issues, now around mental health issues, where we have a natural alignment on the well-being of our young people. If they have the first half of the school day, we've got the second. We've got to work together to keep our kids in healthy experiences. With issues like fan behavior, the officials shortage, that's where we need to go to the next level and say, it's just as important for you guys as it is for us. Join us in this as best as you can, and let's work on policy. Let's work on some expectations, accountability measures that schools can implement from a policy perspective. They're good at that. They're the ones in charge of hiring and firing coaches and officials, implementing regulations in their gyms and on their fields. It's not us, it's gotta be them. So we need to do a better job with that.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, I think that brings us to the conclusion today. We thank all of you for your attendance today. Certainly thank Dr. Niehoff and Dana Pappas for their work on this session today. Great job. We had a lot of good feedback from you on the call today. So we appreciate your time, all of you here today. Again, we do have the link to this will be on our YouTube page. If you would like for us to send that to you, let us know as well. You see here on the screen now, our contacts. Certainly reach out to us if you have some more questions, want any follow-up with Dana or Dr. Niehoff, we'll be glad to reach out to them and provide you any more information. So we thank you very much. You see the link to our YouTube is in the chat. Chris has put that in, so feel free to, after that comes up here in a little bit, feel free to go get that and follow up with any questions. Again, we thank you for your time today, and thank you for all of your work across the country. And we wish you a rest of a good day. Thank you very much.